We're really excited to have our third presentation for recruiting Washington teachers and bilingual educator initiative students. Just a couple things I like to mention before the presentation starts. As a reminder, we are recording. You probably just got that little note on your screen. If you choose to turn your camera on, your video and image will not be in the recording. We just have the speaker pin. So right now they're just seeing my face. But if you unmute yourself to speak or ask a question, your voice will be in the recording. So I just want everyone to be aware of that. As always, we really strongly encourage your participation. If you have a question or comment, you can let us know by using the raise hand feature, or in this small group. I mean, you could literally just raise your hand and we'll see you. And of course, please feel free to share your question or comment directly in the chat, and then we'll be monitoring that and sharing those aloud throughout the presentation. And so I just want to get right to it. I was told in a survey recently that I talked too much last time. So let's get to the presentation. I am so excited to introduce you to today's speaker. He is a graduate of Renton High School, where he participated in the RWT program, which is better known as the Renton Teacher Academy. Currently, he's a fourth grade teacher at Benson Hill Elementary in, you guessed it, Renton School District. We are so happy to have him join us today to share his experiences in education as both a student and an educator. So just a big welcome to Alejandro Castro-Wilson.
Sorry, you skipped the background music and all the sounds and applause. Okay. Hi everyone, it's good to see you all. So like Stacey had presented, my name is Alejandro Castro-Wilson. I also go by Alex, either way, kind of. And I'm honored to kind of be here to get to talk to everybody kind of about my experience, my journey in going from a high school graduate to kind of my pathway to becoming a teacher. It was definitely very rocky and not the easiest of pathways, but I'm always thrilled and excited to share my story because it's very similar to students of color, similar like me, who are trying to navigate their pathways to getting to their career goals, if it's teaching or whatever their kind of their aspirations are. And so I'm honored to have the privilege to share my story. Again, my slide doesn't really have too many talking points. It's just the bullet points that I'm going over. But who am I? So Stacey did a great job of kind of my resume, to say the least. I'm a fourth grade teacher here in the Renton School District. So I am the whole mission of grow your own. So I was a student in the Renton District for my whole K-12 education, and then went to school and came back and became a paraeducator in the school district. And then after finishing my teaching preparation program, got hired as a teacher. And so kind of a whirlwind. I feel old saying that I'm the class of 2010, even though I know that I know I shouldn't feel that way, but I definitely feel really old right now saying that. I'm also currently a graduate student at Washington State University. So I'm going for my second master's in special education. So I continue my learning and growth just because I find that every year there are new situations that come up where I'm excited to learn more and how I can better support my students. So constantly a lifelong learner. And then as stated, I was in the first Teacher Academy program from the Professional Educator Standards Board. When the program started in 2008, I was one of the first original students. So I like to call myself one of the OGs. We have an OG chat between like 4 or 5 of us of some of the originals from back in the day. So it's good to kind of still keep that connection as we move forward through the phases. A lot of times I get asked what inspired me to be a teacher. And sometimes it was hard to grapple with because you think about, we have so many different influences in our lives. And for me, I feel that I have the best view of people because I've gotten to work in so many different chains, from being a paraeducator to being a teacher to teaching preparation programs to all those different things. I have so many different inspirations, but there are a few that stick out to me that I highlight in a lot of my presentations because there are 3 solid people that kind of continue to inspire me as I became a teacher. I'll talk about those in a little bit because apparently I did not organize my slides correctly. So that's a flaw and error of technology and me wanting to be all pretty ditzy for this presentation, but I changed everything. So I'll tell you about my inspirations a little bit later. But one of the challenges of getting here today was, you know, when you grow up, and especially as a student of color, one big thing that happened to me was stereotyping. Many times, and especially when growing up, there is the stereotype that because I was Latino, because I was Mexican American, that I didn't care about school, or that I was going to be in a gang, or I was going to have an affiliate, or I was going to be 16 and pregnant and have a child before I graduated high school. And so, or that I didn't speak English, even though I talk fast and I do mutter a little bit. I speak perfect English. And so there's always these assumptions that were made about me because of just looking at my character. And that happened quite a bit throughout my educational career, even when I was in middle school and all the way up until high school. And most recently, when I think about my experiences, I realized that there weren't teachers that looked like me. I've never in my career span, up until I got to college, had a teacher that was Mexican American or Latino or Latinx. I never had anybody that looked like me or identified as me. And so it was hard for me when trying to think about a career in education, why I would see myself there, and that why was kind of like a exterior, but also a reason why I wanted to. But stereotyping was at the foremost, frontmost of my education career. Everybody has a different pathway in how they grew up. For me, we went through some hardships as a family. I grew up in South King County in Renton. And so in unincorporated King County, you have kind of a lot of different socioeconomic statuses. And for me, I lived a pretty decent life up until my parents got divorced. And so going through that as an 8th grader, going into high school, I think you can kind of imagine that, especially as a teenager going into that, you have a lot of emotions going on. And so, you know, adolescence, puberty, all those things happen at that time. And so you go through this range of a roller coaster, which is slightly sucks. But it is what it is. And so with my parents' divorce, it made a huge impact on my life and also in my own home life. For my sophomore and senior year of high school, I was homeless. And so part of that stability in my own life was recognizing that I had to do everything in my power to ensure that nobody saw that in me. So you would never, if you looked at me in high school, you would never see me as somebody who might have looked like they were homeless. I tried to come off as an average student, but academically, you could definitely see that something was different. Going from a 3.7 GPA freshman year to a 2.1 was a dramatic change. My teachers noticed that there was and so homelessness was a huge part of my upbringing and also kind of where I find my empathy a lot for situations, because as a teacher, you're going to have a multitude of different backgrounds of students, from homeless to families who are in different placements of homes, all the different scenarios that you can have. And so I think while it was a challenge for me, it's one thing that I empathize with myself, that I'm able to bring that understanding to when it applies to my students. When you hear teacher salaries, you, especially when you start off, back in 10 years ago, it was a lot different than how it currently is. It's not that bad to be a teacher now. Salary-wise, it's pretty, you know, it's a pretty average pay. Like you're decently compensated. Back in 2010, it wasn't the high rate, like when people saw teacher salaries, it's like, oh, cool, you're working for free. You don't really get paid that much. Kids back to you, all these different things. And so becoming a teacher wasn't really like that spot on job. Like as a high schooler, you're trying to think about where you can get the money. Like I want to be rich and have all the dollars. And so I thought I should be an accountant, and lo and behold, I suck at math. So accounting is not in this foreseeable future. Sorry, if you need help with your taxes, don't call me. But I can do 5th grade math. I can do it to 5th grade math, but 6th grade and up, well, sketch. So teacher salary was a big thing. And then of course, anxiety, you know, or when you're a student or when you're a child who's homeless, you worry about where your next meal is going to come, when you're going to have the ability to know where you're staying. For some time, I didn't know where I was going to be staying when I go home from school. I knew I took the bus to one location to meet my mom, but am I going to the same place I've been the last few weeks, or are we going somewhere different? There's a lot of up and hill battle. And so going through a normal school day, trying to function as a student, but also trying to live your life. Like school wasn't my priority at the time. Being human and those human instincts of, I need to know how I'm going to provide for myself, were at the forefront of everything for me. And so some of those challenges were there and present, but I think those made me grow stronger as I've gotten to be where I am today. I found my mouse because I'm using two different things. So, okay, that first slide was completely out of place. So here's the who inspires me part. So there are three people that stand out to me in my kind of career, and there's several mentors that I've had, but there are three specifics that stand out to me. One of them is here presently today. So of course, you have one teacher that inspires you when you're in your educational pathways. And for me, it was Mr. Hansing. His name's Eric Hansing. He's a fifth grade teacher at Bryn Mawr Elementary. He was my mentor teacher when I was in the RWT program at Bryn Mawr. He still works in the district, and he was my original fourth and fifth grade teacher. And he was my first ever male teacher, which I didn't think existed in elementary schools because all my teachers prior to that were all female. So I was like, whoa, dudes are here. This is cool. And also he's a giant dude, like he's 6'4", kind of scary. He's kind of a tree. And I definitely have the same personality I did when I was a kid, and definitely told him that the first day I met him probably wasn't my greatest choice of words as a fourth grader, but you know, okay. It was pretty cool because I got to work alongside him when I became a paraeducator at Bryn Mawr. He's still at Bryn Mawr today, still teaching fifth grade at Bryn Mawr. But he truly was one of those people that just made me love learning and made me want to become a fourth grade teacher, which is why this is my cozy spot. Dr. Eric Hogan, he's currently a teacher at Central Washington University, but he was also the first recruiting Washington Teachers Grant teacher at Renton High School. So he was our RWT when the program started. Also, lo and behold, he became my college professor when I went to college. And let me say, I was not his favorite. I feel like maybe people thought I was his favorite, but it was surely when you come to class, oh, Alejandro, can you take attendance? Alejandro, can you do this? So I felt like I was kind of his teacher's assistant in college. And my counterparts, my peers were like, why do you know him this well? And it definitely did not make me feel welcome, but I love it. It's part of our personality and our friendship. And he's just somebody that inspired me to love teaching. And so it was just that connection of learning about teaching in high school that I was like, wow. And he was one of those adults that I knew I could go to if I had any problems in my life. I could easily go to his room and he would sit there and let me vent out my life. And we always need that high school teacher. And then, of course, Ms. Carla Smith, who is in the Renton School District currently and is the current Recruiting Washington Teachers Grant teacher in the Renton School District. And she supports all three high schools now. Back in the day, it was only Renton. And for me, Carla has just been an inspiration for how she works with her students. And I think that's something that I bring to, that I kind of mimic when I get to do it with my kids, is she just has a love and passion for what she does. And that I feel like that just warm light brings just a different energy to the room. And so for me, getting to see her teach and seeing how her students work with me as a mentor teacher, I feel just inspired because she puts her heart and soul into it. And that's how I kind of live vicariously through my own experiences, is I try to put my heart and soul into this because I know all this energy and effort I'm putting forward is going to make a difference. It might not make a difference right there at the present moment, but in a year's time frame, I've been teaching for 4 years now. And I have, just yesterday, I had 4 of my original students who are currently 8th graders in my first class for emailing me, checking in, asking how things are going. And so to see that I've made an impact on just those 4 kids who want to stay connected and check in, I think just speaks volumes to how much you put that time and effort in, and kids will come back. In education and in anything, you need a support system. For me, my support system is those 3 mentors that I have, but also my family. My father, my brother, and my mom are kind of the eclectic family, but they have been my biggest support system in my life. And I could not be where I am today if it wasn't for them. My dad, while my parents were divorced, my dad was always supportive of the education pathways. And I was also the first student, or I was the first Castro in my family to actually get a college degree. So I was a first generation college student, and there are 76 of us. Mexican side, there's a lot of us. And so I'm number 14, and out of the first 14, I'm the only one that's gone to college and has graduated from college. And so for me, college was a huge milestone for me and my family. My dad was a big proponent of it. My brother kind of showed me what not to do in school, if we're going to be completely honest. He wasn't the greatest student in the world. And so that kind of was the role model for me of what not to do. And so it was kind of nice having that role model, but my brother has always been supportive, and my brother actually followed in my pathways, and he is currently a paraeducator in the Renton School District at another elementary school. So he has found his love of educating in a different way. And then, of course, I'm a mama's boy. I completely own it. You ask any of my friends. It's kind of sad, but it's true. But I love it. My mom is the biggest, I think, my biggest cheerleader. And it's also great that she's kind of like the fairy godmother of my classroom, which can be a great benefit, but can also be the biggest curse in the world. Because my mom works graveyards, and so her she doesn't have grandchildren. None of us have provided that for her yet. So my classroom is her grandchildren. And so on Friday mornings, she will nicely show up to my classroom with donuts for my kids at 10 a.m. in the morning to get them on a sugar high at the beginning of the day and completely foil all of my plans. And I think if you're an educator, even if you're a student, you realize if you give a kid sugar, you do it at the end of the day. So when they go home, it goes to the parents, not me. So my mom was the cursed person who did that every week until I finally yelled at her to stop, because one, she was spending a lot of money, and also two, I just needed my kids to function on Fridays and not be on a sugar high all day. But it was done. My kids left. They're like, is Mama Castro coming in? I was like, yeah, we need to stop this. Like, you get once a month and we're done. But I love my mom. She loves my kids just as much as I love my kids. And so I like, your support system is those people who take in your kids and treat them as their own. And so I'm thankful that I have that. Outside of that, you have friends, you have colleagues. A lot of these people are teachers, or were, if I told you that original text group I have, even though they're gonna hate me forever for using these pictures, because they're very derpy. As you can see, I kind of look normal in them, but you can kind of see these are kind of my friends that I grew up with and in the program, and they're part of our group chat. These are my colleagues that I worked with at Bryn Mawr and here at Benson Hill. And so your support system is huge when you become a teacher. And so these are the people I lean on whenever I'm having a bad day or whenever I'm an off day. They're my rise and shine. I would put a picture of my students here, obviously. And because this is recorded, I would not. But my students are also another big support system. Walking in today for this, it's been a hard week, as you can probably imagine, being a remote teacher, being hybrid, and being in person, and kids getting adjusted to it. But it's been kind of a trash fire because they're learning how to be in school again. Everybody's learning how to do it. I'm learning how to be an in-person teacher again. They're learning how to be in-person students. And today was by far the best day we've had. We got through everything planned. We had fun. And those are the moments I've lived for, because it's that light bulb moment where we've been working on writing and math and it has not clicked. And today everything clicked, and it's those teacher moments where you can live on it for a whole week and be like, okay, wow, what a great week this week. So my kids are also a huge support system for me. In my journey to getting to college, when we think about high school, we have our career counselors, we have all those different things. And I truly can say, if you're in the Recruiting Washington Teachers Grant Program, you have so many supports there to help you. And that's what's lovely about this program being on almost 12 years, or 12 or 13 years, if I'm not mistaken, one of those two. It's been here for a while. And there are so many graduates of the program. You have so many available resources, your teachers. And that was the thing that helped me, is if it wasn't for Dr. Hogan, he was the one that helped me apply for college. Because like I said, nobody in my family has gone to college before. So college applications, scholarship applications, I didn't have that support at home. And so having a school system and a program that supported me to do that was phenomenal. Also, we have partnerships. For the Renton program, we partnered with Highline and Central. And so I knew that I had a pathway if this is what I wanted to do with teaching. And so I had somebody connect with a Highline and somebody connected with a Central that could easily help me set up my program so that I could become a teacher if that's what I really wanted to do. It took me a long time. It took me 7 years, because in that whole spiral of life, life happens. When you graduate high school, you're an adult. Which means you have to get a job and you have bills. Yeah, bills. Let's just be real here. Bills are a pain in the butt, especially when you're 18 and you think that you have all the money and the riches in the world because you're a grown up. You're not. And that definitely can bite you in the butt. And so having the supports in place, I think, was really helpful for me and crucial for me to get where I am today. I don't think if I had those supports built into this program, I would be where I am today. And so definitely reaching out to your teachers, connections, anybody that you know in education. I always would say I'm a resource to anybody. So anybody, if you're a high schooler or anybody who needs help with anything, always feel free to reach out. I'm always available to help and happy to help. It might take a little bit of time because it's been a busy week. It's kind of a busy time frame, but I'm always willing to make that hand if you're somebody who needs that support. And that's what's great about being graduates is I think there are so many of us out there that are always willing to lend a helping hand because we've navigated the system just as much as you guys are now. That's kind of all I had. I had a very short presentation because I wanted to make sure, because I know there were some questions that were submitted. So I was going to hand it over, but if you have any questions, definitely feel free to post them in the chat. And I know some were sent to Stacy beforehand, so I will kind of leave that space, but I appreciate the time.
Thank you so much for sharing about your journey. And also one of the things I should have led with, instead of stealing your thunder with your resume, was that Alejandro is doing this on his break between classes. So going from he was teaching math earlier, he said he did great, but that it's just the reality of being an educator that you're always juggling things. And I know, like many of the other educators in this Zoom room, you're also a huge advocate for education and your students. So again, just really want to thank you for that. And I definitely have a list of questions. I'll kick us off with one while students and teachers who are in attendance put theirs in the chat. One of the questions comes from Jackson High School, and a student wants to know how is your experience of being a student different from being an educator?
Hi, good question.
I started big. I did start big. How about this one? This one's first. How long can you remind us how long you've been a teacher?
Yeah, so this is my 4th year as a teacher, a classroom teacher, and then I also served as a paraeducator for 4 years. So this is my 8th year in the Renton district. But this is my 4th year as a classroom teacher. But while I was going to get my certification, I was working as a para in the mornings in the daytime, and then I went to classes in the evenings and did my classes at Central Washington for the 4 years. And took me some time, and then I also worked weekends at a weekend job as well. So I was constantly working, to say the least. I think I can answer your question that you originally answered. I got some process time for how it is being a student versus a teacher. I think one thing that really changed for me is when you think about being a student and being in the classroom, you don't imagine how much time that teachers put in to planning your days. And I think that's the one thing is, as a student, you sit there and you recognize that you're only there for 55 minutes for a section of whatever class, and then you move on and it's transitioning. So you never recognize really the power that there is within that. And as a teacher, I've definitely realized that there's hours and hours upon work that you do, but at the same time, it's meaningful work. But I never realized the time and commitment it took for as a student. I just thought teachers were there till 2:30 and they peaced out and we're like, cool, we're going out the rest of our day. So being on the opposite side now, I bow to teachers. Like they were, I mean, I'm not saying I bow to myself, but like the teachers that I had back in the day, they were definitely putting some hustle on. And so it was definitely eye-opening becoming a teacher and realizing how much work goes in just to plan that one day's lesson. It takes a lot of thought process for the different students you have in your classroom, the different needs that everybody has. And the thing is, as a student, you just think everybody's the same. And so you don't notice all the small little things that teachers are doing to modify their lessons to reach every kid in their classroom. And a lot of work, but it's definitely worth it in the long run.
Thank you for that. There are some questions coming in the chat. The first one is, are there 1 or 2 things that you learned or covered in the RWT program that have really lingered with you and helped you as you began and got started in the field?
Question. In RWT, we focus a lot on We talked about Maslow's hierarchy of need. We talked about Marzano's, see, I haven't used these languages since I graduated from RWT, but I apply them every day. And like the favorite part, like was it say Maslow? Marzano's kind of often management skills by here. And I think those were all things we had to read a book. And at the same time, when you get a book in high school and it's a teacher book, you were looking at like, why am I reading this? But I noticed day in and day out when I went back in my college career, we had to reread the same book. And I realized I used all of those strategies all the time. And so I think a lot of the strategies I learned about brain development, about kind of the right side, left side of your brain, the hierarchy of thinking, those are all skills we learned in the RWT program. And those are skills that I consistently, constantly use on a day-to-day basis.
This one, there are a couple more in the chat and I am going to get to those, but I think this one that came in also from Jackson High School is a good follow-up to this RWT question. What can I do as a student while in high school to prepare to be a teacher?
Be in the RWT program. No, I'm kidding. Besides that, honestly, the one thing that hooked me in as a teacher is internships. So I think the exposure you get to being in the classroom is truly fundamental. And I think what was nice about the RWT program is that they made us go, as much as I knew I didn't want high school and middle school, because I will tell you this, even today, I will not go past 5th grade. And it's just because I know teenagers, because I think about myself in the situation. As a teenager, I was kind of bratty, and I talked back. And it's also puberty, and I'm not dealing with that. And same for high school. I think I could teach high school because of the relationship you can make with kids, like the connection. But at the same time, we talked about my skills with math. Don't know what I would teach in high school. But for me, I think in high school, the internships and just getting the exposure, volunteering, being a part of the work, being involved in, like, elementary schools always have events happening, middle schools always have events happening, and they always look for, and also you need volunteer hours anyway as high school to graduate it. And so constantly volunteering and exposing yourself, that's why I found my niche for like loving elementary school. And my love for kids and working with them is because every day they ask you a million different questions, but it's so much funny how whatever they come up with is what they come up with, and I'm completely thrown off some days, but just their genuine curiosity really dragged me into wanting to be there.
So exposure and knowing yourself, it sounds like, is really important as well. In terms of preparing. I think it's Shylin, I hope I'm saying that right. You may have answered this question a little bit already, but did you always want to be specifically a 4th grade teacher, or did you have a different grade in mind when you thought about being a teacher?
Oh, that's a good question. I've always wanted 4th and 5th grade. 5th grade is like my dream. That's my dream. And I actually, this is my actual first year teaching 4th grade. I've taught 5th grade for the last 3 years, but because of COVID, we decided it would be best for kids to loop with their teachers. So our 4th grade team actually moved to 5th grade this year so that they can keep their kids and kind of continue that work. And then same for me next year. I'll go back to 5th grade next year. So 5th grade has always been my jam. I love 4th and 5th grade, but they're both great. But 5th grade is kind of my niche because it's that last year of elementary school for the most part, most districts. And it's just overall like the kids are at that age where they still, I don't want to say respect is the right word, because I feel like all students still respect you in any complexity of grade levels, but they still have that kind of that innocence that comes with them. So they're very honest, very mellow, and it's just the start of puberty. So they haven't yet quite learned how to backtalk to you yet. It usually happens in the spring where we get a little testy, but also 5th grade is fun. There's so many fun things you do in 5th grade, camp, fundraisers, field trips. Like, I'm all about getting kids out of the building and doing those fun things. And so that's really where I kind of focus a lot of my time.
Thank you. The next question in the chat, and again, we just want to encourage you, if anybody wants to unmute and just ask a question too, feel free. But Lisa from Tacoma wants to know, have you found any students who remind you of your younger self, or any other teachers who remind you of teachers you had?
Oh, that's a deep question. That's a good one. Have I found students that are like me as a student? Oh, that's a toughie. I feel like I haven't found one that's identically like how I was when I was a kid. For sure, I haven't. But I definitely have encountered students who have different or similar interests or backgrounds that I had when I was a kid as a student. And I think those are also students that I think I instantly connect with because you can match the personalities. And so I definitely have met students that are very similar to me or were similar to me as I was growing up. On the teacher side, any other teachers who remind you of teachers you've had? I'm trying to think. The teachers one I can't think of one that every teacher is uniquely different, I feel. I think there's some similar qualities and energy, vibes, and all those different things, but I think each teacher uniquely comes with something different. They bring something different to the table. So it's kind of hard for me to think about any other teachers who would remind me of teachers I've had. Yeah, no, I can't think of it. Like I said, I think every teacher I've had has had something different uniquely about them, or even teachers I encounter and colleagues I've encountered, they all have differences in how they teach and have something really special and unique about them. I think we all have that kind of ability, that thing that we bring to the table.
Yeah, and I really appreciate in your presentation too, you mentioned that your personality is the same as when you were young, and that I think I remember back when I was a young person and I thought I had to be a specific way to be successful, but that really leveraging your strengths as your own individual is that authenticity, especially in the field of teaching, is likely going to be something that really makes you successful.
For sure.
Here's one for you. I think this one's from Carla, and I'm just going to read it. It's definitely from Renton. What roles do relationships play in building student and family trust in our school systems?
What a big question. I think there's so many multi-tiers to that question, but it's a really good question. Can you repeat it for me one more time, Stacey? I know you just muted. Can you repeat it one more time just to make sure I answer it correctly?
Absolutely. And these are really big questions. So I know that it can be difficult to process on the spot. So I have more also. I can just throw them out there and you can take them all.
I have a response. I just want to make sure I actually answer the question and not go on if it happens to me.
Sounds good. Okay. What roles do relationships play in building student and family trust in our school systems?
Got it. Okay. I think your student and family connection is probably the utmost biggest important thing that you can do in education. And especially as a classroom teacher, if you don't have student relationships and connections and you can't make that initial connection for them, your year is going to suck. I think that's as plain and simple as it can go. And I think I think you also have to go in the mindset that you're not going to connect with every kid. It's just, and I think that's the one thing that I struggled with my first few years of teaching, is that there are some kids that you will adore, but sometimes it's just not the perfect fit. And so not every kid is going to like you, and you might not be able to reach and make that connection with every kid, but you have to put every effort forward to try. And then it's the thing is some kids just won't connect and won't vibe, and that's what it is. But you can still gain a respectful relationship with them to be able to continue forward. But I think family and student connections, I prioritize that as my highest thing, because until you have that connection, kids are not going to want to learn or engage with you if they have no connection with you. And so most of the years, every year I start the school year, I'll probably get in trouble for saying this. I usually don't follow the pacing guide. If we're going to be completely honest, that our district aligns us with. And that's solely because starting off the first day of the school year should not be instructional. It should not be a day where I'm trying to teach you the first day of the lesson of math. And usually we start on those weird like Wednesdays. So we have like a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then we have Labor Day typically. And then like wonky schedules for 50 weeks. So usually I don't really teach anything content-wise the first 3 days. And the reason for that is because kids need to build that connection with you, and they need to build that connection within each other. You have to establish your classroom communities. And that is, if you don't have a classroom community, you're going to fall to shambles. And that's also where you teach procedures. That's where you get into the groove of things. But you also get to learn a lot about kids, and they get to learn a lot about you. You get to learn their interests. Every year is different. 1 year it's TikTok, 1 year it's Minecraft, 1 year it's Roblox, 1 year it's Visco Girls or whatever, Team Visco. 1 year it's all about the memes. I mean, 1 year like 1 year was Pokemon. Like I've had so many different things pop up. And bear in mind, I teach elementary school, so some of you might be looking at me like I'm crazy. But it's just a different interest. And the thing is, when you pick those interests, if you align and put those interests into your lessons, you've made the biggest connection because the kids see that you've heard them. Today, my lesson has something to do with Minecraft. Do I know anything about Minecraft? No. Do I play Minecraft? No. Do I listen to it every day? Yes. But I incorporated that in a math question. The walls went crying crazy because kids were so excited because they're like, oh my God, yeah, you can build this and you can do that. I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about, but that's okay. You're engaged. We're going to take it. And so the moment you make those connections with kids and families, I think you can get the families on your side as well. It's a golden year. And I think family connection is huge because when a student is struggling or when a student needs help or you're concerned about a student, the family is going to be your first response. The parents know their child. They're the best person to know their child. And so I'm getting to know them, but I don't know everything that ticks them off. I don't know the happy moments. I don't know all the sad moments because I've only been there for a few weeks or months. And so family connection, I always invite families in. My classroom is an open door because my families are a part of the community. It's not just my kids, their families are included in our community as well. And so they are invited into our space. And I think when you have that openness of your classroom, to invite that welcoming that they can come in and volunteer, they can come in and just sit in and watch. You want them to be engaged with it, the more that they see that you intentionally really want them to be a part of that learning.
Thank you. I'm going to ask you two questions. One's from the chat and then one is from Jackson High School. So the chat is, what's your favorite part of teaching? And then the other question is, what's the hardest part of being a teacher?
Ooh. My favorite part of teaching, I don't even know if I could pick a favorite, if we're going to be completely honest. Like, I think there are so many amazing things about being a teacher. My favorite part of teaching, I think, is that I get to act like myself. I get to be goofy and quirky and, as my kids would say, really embarrassing because they made me floss today, and seeing a 28-year-old floss in front of your kids, it's okay. I see you. You laugh, and it's okay. You can laugh at me. I laughed at myself. You try to be hip and cool, and it's funny how much I fail at it sometimes, but sometimes I hit like right on the nail. And I think it's so much fun for them to be engaged in that connection with me. I getting to learn about them, in all honesty. I think that's probably the best part about teaching is that when you see a student who you've been working with time after time again, and that moment clicks for them, where they're like, oh my God, I get that skill, or they've had a really hard time with something and they finally get it, or they're on the pathway of getting it, I'm over the moon. So that's my favorite part of teaching, is just there's so many different experiences, but I just love that I can be my authentic self. I'm pretty blunt and candid as a normal human being with people. For people who know me, I'm pretty straightforward. And that's also why I love 4th and 5th grade, is because you can be straightforward. Like if they do something that wasn't the smartest decision, I'm like, really, should you have done that? Probably not. Yeah, let's check it next time. But they also know they can call me for my. So that's one really good thing.
So we have a couple more questions if you have time. Some folks have to leave because they have because the 4th period bell just rang. But the questions were, oh, let's see, you hadn't answered this question. What is the hardest part of being a teacher in your opinion?
The politics. I mean, I can simply, I shouldn't be that honest about it, but it's probably true. The politics can somewhat make teaching a drag and make it less fun. And when I mean politics, I mean, there's so many things that go into teaching, from schedule changes to things that happen at district level, things that, I mean, and it's things that you can't change. And especially this year with the pandemic, we are all learning as we go, but there are so many different protocols and different things we have to follow, and then there's conflicts, and there's all these different things because of what we feel as teachers versus, there's so many different things. And also you think about not just within a school district, but on the state level, within a nation level, and how things are happening with education. There are just so many opinions, and sometimes it can really drag down your love for it sometimes, but it's kind of constantly reminding yourself, like, your kids my kids would always remind me, like, this is why I do it. Like, whatever's happening outside of my four walls, happen, do you, I don't care. I need to focus on what's happening in my classroom. And so I also constantly remind myself, like, okay, don't worry about the politics, like, do you, and that's fine. And so that's probably one of the hardest parts of teaching is really just the politics.
That really sounds like what we've heard in a couple of the previous presentations, as well as this idea of how do you avoid burnout. And it makes me think of your friends from the Teacher Academy and from your teacher prep program, and your network that you have been building is probably also a strong support in getting through some of that.
Agreed.
I'm actually going to ask a question because when you were talking, you were showing pictures of your friends. I appreciate that you picked the ones where you look good. But it made me wonder how many students, how many of your friends from the RWT program also went into teaching, and if you can share anything that you've heard from them about those who chose not to, if there were barriers for them.
So, I'll go back to this. So let's see. Well, all these are coworkers, but these two. So this is Maria and Mika. So Maria is actually teaching right now. She went back. She was a student last year. She's currently on the East Coast right now, teaching in New York. And so she is teaching English language arts. So she went and got her master's in English language arts and as a secondary for teaching. So she is teaching currently. My friend Jennifer McAuliffe, who was also on the original program, she is currently on a leave of absence because she just had a child. And not come back to school. She is currently a first grade teacher at Bryn Mawr. So she is also one of those grow your owns and came back to Renton. Jennifer, Jasmine, while she wasn't specifically in the RWT program, she was somebody who we went to high school who was very close to Jennifer. And so this is actually our superintendent, Dr. Damian Padna, who was also our principal in high school. But this is all of our first day orientation as a new teacher breakfast that we did at our district host with the local chamber. And so this was kind of a special moment because this is all of our first years at Renton. And so it was an exciting time. So Jasmine teaches second grade at Cascade in the Renton School District. And I'm trying to think of others that I was in the program with. Vanessa Francia was in the original. She taught middle school. She's currently living the mom life. And so she's a stay-at-home mom right now. Trying to think, there were quite a few of us. Some of us ventured into different pathways. So some people went towards like psychology, some went towards like school counseling, some went into really early childhood living or early childhood care, so that birth through pre-K. And so kind of there's probably about 10 of us that are still involved in education in some type of pathway, whether it's social work, counseling, psychology, whatever the case may be. But yeah, those are kind of the ones that I kind of keep closely knit with at this time.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. It sounds a lot like you were saying this idea of in response to the question, what can I do to prepare in high school? But a lot of that is just about the exploratory piece and learning about yourself. And then you can make more informed decisions as you progress on your career path. So I just want to open it up in case anyone has questions that they haven't asked yet. If not, I'll end with two difficult questions, also from Renton. All of the difficult questions today for you. One, and this is a big one, and I think you've been speaking about this, but again, I just want to put it out there. What's your why? And there is a specific question here about assessments. So what do you believe to be true about assessments? And I think that means assessments in the teacher preparation process.
Nope. Kyla, what do you mean?
You can take that any way you want to. My students right now are working through the fact that all the assessments, the state assessments, everything has changed. And then I said, but how do you feel about that? Maybe even your future teachers' assessments are getting thrown out as well. So you can take that as you as a classroom teacher, how do you feel about assessments? Or you can take it as the assessments you've had to take to become a teacher. I'll let you take it either direction. It'll be helpful to their projects that they're working on right now.
Yeah, of course. So kind of my why. I think for my why, I think, and especially I've been reflecting on it a lot more this past year and kind of all the circumstances that are happening around our nation, especially with people of color, is as I shared, I never had a teacher of color until I got to high school. And so for me, and same for my first male teacher was in elementary school, but besides that, that was the first time I was exposed to it, and I was at the end of my elementary career. So for me, when I thought about teaching, when I originally thought about it, I thought about it in the lens of really thinking about how I wanted to see myself in the students that are in my school. So in the demographic of our school, especially in Renton, we see that there's kind of a different Renton, from my understanding from the last time I checked numbers, our staffing is about 80% Caucasian and 20% people of color. But then it's a flip side that there's 80% students of color and 20% white students. And so when you see the disproportionality of that, it speaks volumes to me of how important it is for me as a male educator in elementary school, but also a male teacher of color, to be prominent in a student's life, for them to see that exposure and to connect themselves is a career that anybody can have. Doesn't matter what stereotypes you put on you or what kind of barriers. And I think another facet to that, or another kind of outlet that thinks about, especially with the times that are happening, especially when we think about Black Lives Matter, we think about racial inequities and racial justice and social justice that are happening in our society. It's important that we also are teaching those lessons, and we're teaching those teaching the value of that, not necessarily from a biased opinion, but teaching facts. And I think sometimes that's of a hindrance for maybe people who are uncomfortable about that topic. And for me, I think it's important for when we have Black Lives Matter at school and teaching that content specifically, because I think it's important for students to have another viewpoint and lens that are different from their own and kind of share their similar experiences that they may have encountered. And so now I think my why is really, one, still keeping that original mission that I had about being a male teacher of color in elementary education, because there's very few of us in elementary education. I'm one of two actually male classroom teachers in our building. So in our whole building, there's two classroom teachers. There are our PE teacher and our music teacher itinerants are male teachers, but besides that, there's only two male classroom teachers. And both of us are teachers of color, but we're only in the intermediate grades as well. So we're the 4th and 5th grade. And so I still hold that value really important to me in my why, but also I think to really continue to kind of break apart this systemic system that we have in our school culture, and really make sure that students have access to a lot of different outlets. And that's something that I'm still growing on my own journey. I'm not saying I'm an expert at it by any means necessary, because I'm still learning in my journey. But I think it's important for us to also shed that what's happening in real world time with our students, and really have them making their own matter of opinion of it. And especially as a student of color, and my students being majority students of color, seeing that these injustices are happening to people around in our state and in our country, that they really need to be known. And so really just trying to make them see that light as well, but open them up to that exposure, which sometimes I feel like is sometimes hindered depending on the comfortability of the teacher. And it shouldn't be about what's comfortable for us, but it should be what students need to have for their acknowledgement, for them to be people in our society, the humans in our society. They need to have those valued opinions. And so that's kind of where my why has been changing a little bit more nowadays. To answer your other question, which was around assessments, I'm not a fan of assessments, if I'm gonna be completely honest. And I think, Conrad knows me anyway, but just in the general sense of terms, I think I think there's different lenses that you can have. When I think about statewide assessments, I'm not the biggest proponent of the SBA or the state standardized assessments, because it is a biased system. It is a dominant culture view of an assessment, and it's a very one-way assessment. And I don't view assessments in that way. Even as a classroom teacher, for a student, like when we're doing writing, just because it's writing and you expect a kid to write a 5-paragraph essay, they can do a PowerPoint presentation or Google Slides. If they want to write a rap, if they want to do poetry, my focus isn't on there's one way to do it. As a teacher, you have to give students outlets that show how they are going to best demonstrate their work and what works for them. They're still getting the concepts, they're still getting the idea. I can still assess on the standard, but I don't have to have a one lens view. It can be, how can I make a broad assessment that really it takes the work off of me. It's student centered and it's student focused, and that's, I think, where power comes in. As an educator of color who is still struggling with his teacher assessments, there are a lot of barriers in getting to be a teacher. There's the TPA, which there has been revisions to. I know the legislator is also making changes, and the Professional Education Standards Board has also been doing a lot of that work as well, and really thinking about how we remove those barriers. But if I'm like, my teammates are both veteran teachers who've been teaching for 16 plus years. All you had to do to be a teacher back then was go to teaching school and graduate, and you got your license as a teacher. Versus now, you have to take the TPA, you have to take your NES. Depending on which content area, you might have multiple NESs you have to take. And then all of these cost money. And when you think about somebody who's a para, and paras don't make that much, I'll be completely honest, making $100 or only $1,600 a month to live off of while going to school, you can't afford to pay $100 for a state test that if you don't pass it the first time, you still have to constantly retake it until you pass. And an Ed TPA, when you're student teaching and you're not working another job, you are fully invested in your student teaching, and adding a $300 fee to write a portfolio about how you are a good teacher, and somebody else who doesn't know you grades that for you and it's define if you're a good teacher or not. There's a lot of flaws in our system, and I know things are changing, but assessments in general, I think are ways and how I view them is there are ways for you to see that student has gained that content knowledge, but it can be demonstrated in a multitude of ways. And I think if you offer it that way, you are lending yourself to have rich, meaningful experiences with your students, but then you're also taking the burden off of yourself, because kids get to pick that choice. Students are the drivers of that seat, of that car, and they can drive it whatever they want, and you are kind of a guide. And that's how I like to see assessments, is I give them the freedom of choice and they go and explore, and I will support them in whatever ways I need to. And so that's how I feel assessments in all predicaments of levels, but I think state centers such are stupid. That's one person's perspective.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And Carla, thank you for clarifying. It's a good reminder that there is a lot of different assessments happening at all levels.
Yes, thank you, because my students probably got a whole lot of good stuff to use on their project for that. So good job, Mr. Castro.
Well, on that note, I think we've hit you with all the difficult questions on your break, and we should give you a little time to get ready for your next class. But I just want to thank everyone for being here. And Alex, thank you for making time for this. We so appreciate you, and look forward to sending lots of students your way for support and advice.
Of course, anytime. Thank you guys for making the time. I appreciate the ask, and thank you.